What is up, guys? This is the Fast Break Sports Podcast with Sammy G. I'm your host, Sammy G. So, a little background on what we got going on here. We're going to be talking mainly about basketball, whether that be college, NBA, overseas. We might even get a little into. But as the podcast goes on and basketball kind of dies down, we might get into other sports. Might not. Might have a couple guests come on. But as for now, we're going to be focusing on mainly basketball for the most part, at least. So, with the upcoming draft, we are going to be discussing at who I personally think will go number one and analyzing the certain individuals that have the potential to go number one overall. So, obviously, we have Minnesota with the number one pick. And then two, we have the Golden State Warriors, and three, we have the Hornets. So number one, we have Minnesota. Uh, Mainly, there are two individuals that I can see going to this spot, and that is Anthony Edwards out of Georgia and LaMelo Ball out of Australia. Now, some of you might be saying, what about James Wiseman? Personally, I don't think Minnesota would go after a guy like James Wiseman. They kind of already have that guy, that big man, that X factor down in the paint in Cat, and he seems to be their big man, if you will. So I'm gonna be looking at Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball. So first, we're gonna analyze Anthony Edwards, shooting guard out of Georgia. He's a 6'5" shooting guard weighing 225 pounds. In his 1 year at Georgia, he started all 32 games, averaged around 33 minutes, shot 40% from the field, 29% from the three, and 77% from the free throw. And then he averaged 5.2 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1.3 steals, 2.7 turnovers, 2 fouls, and a 19-point average. So why I think this would be a good pick for the Timberwolves, both D'Angelo Russell and Cat have contracts that end in 2023. The need for a shooting guard and a small forward is an obviously need for the Timberwolves, which can be filled by Edwards. The T-Wolves need another consistent scoring option, which Anthony Edwards can provide. So as for some of the strengths in Anthony Edwards' game, he has a 7-foot wingspan, which is helpful on defense. Unlike many guards, they usually don't have a 7-foot wingspan. And the size and physicality, 6'5", 225. That's your ideal shooting guard. You have to be big and strong to play in the NBA, and Anthony Edwards has both of those. Another very good strength of his, as I was watching this film, is shot creation. He can get a shot whenever he wants. Yes, he played in a rather weak SEC conference last year, but still averaging 19 points in that conference is very impressive. And he was basically the main guy. He was the main guy on Georgia, main scorer, main everything. Another thing is open court offense. Every time they were on fast break, he either made a play or laid it up, got a bucket, either way. Another thing with that is he can get to rim with ease with his ball handling skills, space creation, speed, and then obviously, as everyone knows, he's a great shooter. The only drawback with that I'll discuss later. So with that, it's a given. He's a offensive guru, if you will, and the T-Wolves need that. They need that guy who can average 15 points a game along with D'Angelo Russell and Cat. They need that third scoring option. Now, a weakness of his is, will he be able to be as effective if he's not the number one option. Because at Georgia, he was clearly the guy. If there was a close game, he was getting the ball, whether he's triple teamed, double teamed, he's taking that last shot. And in the Timberwolves offense, I personally don't think he will. I think it's D'Angelo Russell will be their number one, Cat two, and Anthony Edwards if they choose to draft him. Now, for some of the weaknesses, I actually saw a lot of weaknesses, but just with him being such a high offense performer, kind of outweighs those weaknesses. And so at times, as I was watching film, I noticed he just lacks effort sometimes. Like if he misses a shot, it affects him. And that's a little concerning as an NBA scout. You want that guy that, oh, I'll miss a shot, I'll get back on defense, play good defense. Another thing is his playmaking ability. A lot of the times he'll be double teamed. There'll be a guy in the corner wide open, and he takes a fadeaway turnaround jumper, and it's nowhere close to making it. But you might say, oh, he might become a better playmaker. He didn't have those players like D'Angelo Russell or Cat around him, and that's true. I think if he gets drafted by the Timberwolves, I think his playmaking will be improved because you won't see him getting double teamed because that leaves D'Angelo Russell or Cat or any of the other players open. And this is not NCAA basketball. Anybody needs to be able to make a open shot. Another weakness of Edwards I saw in mini film was he's selfish. I kind of touched on that with his playmaking ability. He tends to take early stupid shots in the shot clock. Say like a timeline three, I've seen him do that a couple times. That's nowhere near. He'll get double teamed instead of passing it out. He'll force a tough shot. Just small like mental basketball IQ things he needs to work on. And then a big thing I kind of touched on earlier with his good shooter strength is the improvement at the 3 point. So he shot around 8 attempts from 3 a game, but only made around 2 of those. That's leaving him at a 29.4 percentage. And that's just not gonna fly in the NBA. You gotta, especially in today's game, you gotta shoot better from 3. But another thing is he often settles for that. It'll be a 2-on-1, and instead of giving it up or just taking it to the hole, you see him pull up from 3 when it's not necessary at all. Another weakness I saw was poor shot selection. I mentioned that with the selfishness, getting double teams, forcing a bad shot. Another weakness is he is one of those players that needs the ball in his hand. He ran a lot of isolation offense in college. He would just get the ball, everyone clear out, do a couple dribble moves. If he beats him, it's an easy bucket. But if he doesn't, he gets caught. He usually forces a bad shot or doesn't see that open guy. And then another thing I saw in his film I would watch was another thing I referenced earlier is just the lack of effort, and it's definitely shown more on the defensive side than the offensive side. Offense, he's there, he's in it to win it. But on the defensive side, you see him kind of lag. Kind of reminds me of James Harden on the defensive end, and really heavily leans on his offensive skills. So with all that in mind, I do have a couple concerns with Anthony Edwards, and that is, can he play with other stars like D'Angelo Russell and Cat, which from his college game, I don't know if that's the case, but who knows? You didn't have those other stars at Georgia. Another concern I have is off ball. Like I mentioned, he was really ISO heavy. He just had to have that ball. And with D'Angelo Russell, especially, I don't think he's going to be that main guy. He's going to be playing the 2 or 3 spot. And then another concern is obviously this: can he be that second or third option? Or can he come off the bench? Can he be that sixth man for the Timberwolves? But at the same time, do you want your first pick to be a six man, or do you want him to be a starter? Can he work with your other starters? Because it's obvious the Timberwolves love D'Angelo Russell, and especially Cat. And I don't see them going anywhere until, well, they're signed till 23, so I don't see them going anywhere unless D'Angelo Russell demands a trade. As a little fun thing, I'm doing a little bit of comparisons like they do on draft night. I saw a lot of resemblance with James Harden. Very relies heavily on his offensive game and can get a bucket whenever he wants. Very ISO heavy. Um, uh, Tends to shoot poorly, but that James Harden, that's kind of their offensive scheme, is quick 3-point ISO, and I don't think that's gonna work. Timberwolves with Edwards if he gets drafted there. But that is my comparison. Relies heavily on his offense, kind of a liability on the defensive end. So the other person I'm going to analyze is LaMelo Ball out of Australia. Um, he's an interesting player to talk about because he doesn't have your traditional path. He I'll get into that later, but he is a 6'7" point shooting guard out of Australia. Like I said, Illawarra Hawks of the NBL, the National Basketball League. And he's 180 pounds. As for his stats, he has quite a bit of professional stats. Junior Basketball Association, you can say what you want, but I mean, he was basically a professional. Not so much in the state side where he was the member of the Los Angeles Ballers, but moreover on the JBA USA. He was playing, you can say they're lower tier, but he's still playing professional basketball players overseas, getting that professional experience. So over the 8 regular season games, Ball actually averaged a triple-double with 39.6 points, 14.6 rebounds, and 11.5 assists per game. Yeah, you can say like there wasn't any defense because they scored 160 points. But no, then why wasn't everybody averaging 39.6 points, 14.6 rebounds, and 11.5 assists? And he dominated when he went overseas too. And then that's another story. He comes back to Spire and dominates there. And then we also have when he was on Viatudas in LKL, the Lithuanian Basketball League. Sorry if I butchered that, but as a 16-year-old, which is, he's literally the youngest professional basketball player ever to play overseas or in the United States. He averaged 6.5 points, 2.4 assists, 1.1 rebounds in just 8 games, but he only played 12.5 minutes, and some believe it had to do with the communication between his dad and the head coach of that team. And then, so he went back, came back to USA, dominated high school with Michigan State Spartan, Rocket Watts, and then Isaiah Jackson, who I believe is a 4 or 5-star recruit. I believe he is also committed to Michigan State last time I checked. And then they actually made it to the grind session championship, but couldn't get the dub. LaMelo Ball actually fouled out within the last minutes. So with him playing in the JBA and being considered a professional, he was not allowed to play NCAA. So he kind of paved another pathway for these young athletes. He actually went to the NBL in Australia, the Australian Basketball League. They had a program, it's called the Rising Stars program. It's kind of like what the G League is doing with Jalen Green, Isaiah Todd, Jonathan Kuminga, and all those guys. So he actually went to Illawarra Hawks. He played alongside Aaron Brooks. He is a former NBA player. RJ Hampton was also over there. Andrew Bogut, Melo Trimble, former Maryland player. Just some real hoopers, in my personal opinion. But in the 12 games he played, 17 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, and 7 assists per game in 31.2 minutes. He did struggle. Weakness for him has always been he's a streaky shooter, but I'll touch on that later. So why do I think LaMelo Ball can possibly go number one? I personally think this is kind of a generational talent, to be honest. It's rare to see a 6'7" guy that can do what he does. I'm very high on LaMelo. Will he go one? I don't know. I think he should. I think he is the best player in this draft. But due to politics of the basketball world, he might not, or is he a good fit? So why I think this is a good pick, though? I mean, he's proved it over and over again. He can play alongside big name players. He did it when he was playing with his brothers at Chino Hill. Yeah, you can say LiAngelo wasn't the greatest or isn't in the NBA or something, but he is one of the California high school basketball player leading scorers of like all time. And then you got Lonzo, who's obviously, y'all know him. He's a point guard for Pelicans, and then previously the Lakers, just true ballers, no pun. And then he does his thing in Chino, and then he goes to JBA. You can say they didn't have any good talent, but he played alongside a 4-star recruit. This recruit had some trouble with his schooling, had some stuff come up in his personal life. His name's Greg Floyd. If y'all don't know him, check him out. He's honestly one of my favorite players. But he played with him in the JBA, and then he played with Jello when he came on, and then they went over to JBA USA, played with Jello again, played with a old Ole Miss player that was on the Ole Miss basketball team. Curtis Hollis, another favorite player of mine. He ended up going overseas to Pro B Germany, playing for Dragon Rodenow, where he won like basically the all-rookie team over there. So it's obvious. And then not to mention Spire, where he played with Rocket Watts, who's at Michigan State, and Isaiah Jackson, who's coming to Michigan State. So I think he can play alongside stars, but he can also be that go-to guy. Another reason I think this is a great pick, I've kind of touched on it a little bit, is he is a generational type player. You don't see many guys with the athleticism of 6'7" and can just do anything you want. Yeah. Another thing, I mean, he's just kind of crazy how good this kid is. As for strengths, his playmaking ability, go look him up on YouTube, making no look passes, behind the back passes, getting buckets. Another thing, ball handling. I mean, he's got handles unlike any other 19-year-old I've ever seen personally. The speed with the ball, just making that space to get a bucket or draw defensive defense and dish it out to a guy shooting a three, puts it up on 3-point line or down low. One of the things I think LaMelo Ball is really good at is how he can improvise. You can have a broken play, defense playing really well, and he can make a play, whether it's him shooting, whether it's him calling a pick and roll, finding the open man, dishing it to him, getting bucket, or just knowing like when to do what. And that kind of falls into the next strength I think LaMelo Ball excels really well at is the basketball IQ of this 19-year-old. Just the ability to make plays when a play needs to be made is something LaMelo Ball has proven to do over and over again. He can take over a game at any time. And then obviously his height, you don't see a 6'7" guy with the handles and speed and athleticism like this guy. Now for the weakness, we have the shot selection. He'll take stupid shots. I know off the top of my head, he shot like 19% from three during his JBA season. So that's obviously an area he needs to prove on. But so the thing I noticed watching LaMelo Ball's film is if he gets within the 3-point arc, there's a pretty good shot it's going in. His floater game is one of the most impressive I've ever seen personally. And just the ability, his shot selection is unique because inside he could finish with the best of them, but get him outside the 3-point, and that's what some teams prove. You shoot rather poorly. And that goes into my next point. His 3-point game is definitely a weakness. Let's see here. So another thing is Illawarra vote. He won NBA Rookie of the Year. He got 2 triple-doubles. So in 2019-2020 season with the Illawarra Hawks, he shot 37% from the field. For a 19-year-old, that's pretty solid. And then 72% from the free throw line. From three, so he shot about 25% from the three, which obviously is a huge concern with NBA scouts and the NBA game today as a whole. It's a very 3-point heavy league. And I mean, we've seen players like Russell Westbrook doesn't, or Ben Simmons don't have a good 3-point percentage, and that leaves them kind of a liability on the offensive end. And then, like with Edwards, he lacks effort on the defensive end, but that, I mean, you could, this coach once told me you can teach defense, you can't teach offense. And I think that as a weakness for these two individuals, I think it's something that can definitely be handled in the NBA. I think the coaches will work with both of these individuals because they are so good on the offensive end. It's okay if they're a little liable on the defensive end. So for my comparison, odds for LaMelo Ball is, now some of y'all might give me crap for this, but I think it's a more athletic Luka Doncic, kind of do it all kind of guy, can dish when he needs to, can rebound the ball, can get a bucket when he needs to. And I think that right there in that last statement is exactly what LaMelo Ball is to any team he's been on. So obviously, the whole point of this episode was, who do I think is going to be number one overall? I'm going to take this two ways. Who I think should be number one overall is LaMelo Ball. I think he's just can do more on the floor than Anthony Edwards can, and has that pro experience playing overseas with JVA, playing overseas at age 16, and then playing over in Australia with some former NBA players. But do I think the Minnesota Timberwolves will take LaMelo? No. And here's why. D'Angelo Russell is a point guard. He needs a ball in his hand. And yes, LaMelo can play shooting guard, but he's more effective when he is the main ball handler. And I could see it possibly working, but I think the number one overall pick will be Anthony Edwards out of Georgia, because he can play that shooting guard, small forward role, which is what he played in college. And I think with him being that second or third scoring option with this team, I think it's just a little better fit than LaMelo Ball, who plays point guard. Natural position is point guard. But yeah, so I think Anthony Edwards is going number one. So that leaves Wiseman at 2 going to the Warriors, and then LaMelo Ball falls to 3 to the Hornets. But that is all the time we have today for the first episode of the Fast Break Sports podcast with Sammy G. I'm your host, Sammy G. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Peace.